Emily Carter stood frozen in the middle of her own wedding reception. The music was playing, guests were laughing. Her husband had just stepped away to greet relatives. Then a waiter quietly slipped a folded note into her hand. "There's someone outside asking for you." Confused, Emily excused herself and walked toward the front entrance. Standing beneath the pouring rain was a man she had mourned for 7 years. His clothes were soaked. A faint scar crossed his face. His blue eyes locked onto hers, as if no time had passed. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. "Noah?" He swallowed hard before whispering, "I'm sorry I came back too late." But what Emily discovered over the next few hours would make her question whether she'd married the wrong man, or whether fate had simply given love one last chance. 7 years earlier, Emily was 26, living in Seattle, and working as an interior designer. She loved quiet mornings, coffee shops, and sketching old buildings that most people ignored. Her life followed careful plans, until Noah Bennett changed everything. They met on a rainy Tuesday after Emily accidentally spilled coffee across a stranger's blueprints inside a neighborhood cafe. "I'm so sorry," she said, reaching for napkins. The stranger looked at the ruined papers, then smiled. "I guess that's one way to redesign the project." Emily laughed despite herself. That stranger was Noah, an environmental engineer with a passion for restoring historic bridges across the Pacific Northwest. Their first conversation lasted until the cafe closed. The second lasted through an entire sunset on the Seattle waterfront. And before either of them realized it, they had become inseparable. Noah wasn't the kind of man who impressed people with expensive gifts. He remembered the little things. He knew Emily hated crowded restaurants. He always carried an extra umbrella because she constantly forgot hers. Every Sunday they explored a new town together. Sometimes they drove for hours with no destination. Sometimes they watched ferries cross Elliott Bay while sharing hot chocolate. One snowy evening, Emily asked, "Do you ever worry that happiness doesn't last?" Noah smiled without looking away from the water. "Of course." "So why aren't you afraid?" "Because loving someone is worth the risk." Emily reached for his hand. For the first time in her life, the future felt certain. Months later, Noah secretly bought an engagement ring. He planned to propose during their anniversary trip to Vancouver. But life had written a different ending. Just weeks before their trip, Noah received an unexpected opportunity. A humanitarian engineering organization needed volunteers to help rebuild bridges destroyed by severe flooding in a remote region overseas. The assignment would last only 8 months. Emily tried to smile. "You have to go." "What if something happens?" Noah asked quietly. She squeezed his hand. "Then you'll come home, and we'll finally start our life together." At Seattle-Tacoma International Airport, Noah wrapped his arms around her. "I'll call every chance I get." Emily smiled through tears. "I'll be waiting." He kissed her forehead one last time before disappearing through security. Emily watched until she could no longer see him. She had no idea that would be the last time anyone heard from Noah Bennett. 3 weeks later, a devastating landslide buried the convoy carrying Noah's team deep inside the mountains. Rescue crews searched for days. Some survivors were found. Many weren't. And Noah's name was placed on the list no one ever wanted to read. Missing, presumed dead. Emily refused to believe it. But as the weeks turned into months, hope slowly began to fade. Emily refused to accept the news. For nearly a year, she searched for answers no one else was looking for. She called embassies. She emailed humanitarian organizations. She even reached out to journalists who had covered the landslide. Every response sounded the same. "We're sorry. There's no new information." Without a body, there was no real goodbye, only silence. One rainy afternoon, Noah's parents held a small memorial service overlooking Puget Sound. There was no coffin, only a framed photograph surrounded by white lilies. Emily stood beside it, clutching a letter Noah had written before leaving. She couldn't bring herself to read it. As everyone slowly walked away, she whispered through her tears, "If you're still out there, come home." The wind carried her words across the water, but no answer ever came. Little by little, grief became part of her daily life. She smiled for friends. She returned to work. But the woman who had once dreamed so easily had disappeared with Noah. 2 years later, Daniel Brooks entered her life. He was successful, dependable, and calm, a financial consultant with a reputation for solving every problem. Unlike Noah, Daniel believed life should be carefully planned. Their first date wasn't exciting. It was comfortable, and after years of heartbreak, comfort felt like peace. Daniel never tried to replace Noah. Instead, he patiently waited for Emily to heal. One evening, he gently asked, "I know someone once held your heart, but do you think there's room for someone new?" Emily looked down. "I don't know." Daniel smiled softly. "Then let me earn that place, one day at a time." Months turned into years. Emily slowly convinced herself that love didn't always have to feel overwhelming. Maybe stability was enough. When Daniel proposed during a quiet dinner overlooking Lake Washington, she hesitated for only a moment. Then she said, "Yes." Everyone celebrated. Her parents were relieved. Her friends called Daniel the perfect husband. Emily hoped they were right. Their wedding was beautiful. The photographs captured smiling faces, elegant flowers, and promises of forever. From the outside, they looked like the perfect couple. Inside the marriage, something slowly began to change. Daniel became consumed by work. Late meetings turned into overnight business trips. Conversations became shorter. The laughter disappeared. Some evenings, Emily would prepare dinner for two, only to receive a text message. "Working late. Don't wait up." One night, she finally asked, "Are we happy?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he loosened his tie and quietly said, "I'm building our future, Emily. Can't you see that?" She nodded, but deep inside, she wasn't sure she believed him anymore. The house was beautiful. The life was comfortable. Yet somehow, she had never felt more alone. 3 months after their first wedding anniversary, a violent thunderstorm swept across Seattle. Lightning flashed outside the living room windows. Daniel was away on another business trip. Emily was reading when someone knocked on the front door. Once, then again. She wasn't expecting visitors. As she opened the door, a tall man stood beneath the rain. His beard was longer. A scar marked the side of his face. But those blue eyes, she would recognize them anywhere. Her heart stopped. She barely managed to whisper one word. "Noah?" He looked at the wedding ring on her hand. Pain filled his eyes. Then, in a trembling voice, he said, "Emily, I never stopped trying to come home." Emily couldn't speak. For several long seconds, she simply stared at Noah, afraid that if she blinked, he would disappear again. Finally, she whispered, "They told me you were dead." Noah lowered his eyes. "I know." He explained that after the landslide, a handful of survivors had escaped the wreckage. only to be captured by an armed militia operating in the remote mountains. They were moved from camp to camp, with no access to phones or the outside world. It took years before an international rescue team found us, Noah said. The first thing I did after getting home was look for you. Emily's voice trembled. I waited for you, for so long. I know, Noah replied softly, and I'm sorry I wasn't there. Neither of them noticed the headlights pulling into the driveway. Daniel had come home early. He stepped out of his car and froze. His eyes moved from Emily to Noah and back again. Without a word, he knew exactly who was standing on his porch. Inside the house, the silence was unbearable. Finally, Emily looked at Daniel. Did you know there was still a chance Noah was alive? Daniel closed his eyes. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he quietly answered, Yes, but I didn't know for certain. Emily's heart sank. What do you mean? Daniel took a deep breath. Before we got engaged, an investigator contacted me. There were reports that several missing aid workers might still be alive. Noah's name was on that list. Emily felt the room spin. You never told me? I was terrified, Daniel admitted. I loved you, and I knew that if you believed Noah could come back, you would never marry me. Tears filled Emily's eyes. Their marriage hadn't been built on trust. It had been built on a truth that had been hidden from her. Noah stood quietly. He didn't interrupt. He didn't ask Emily to choose. Instead, he said, I'm not here to take you away from anyone. You deserve the freedom to make your own decision. For the first time in years, Emily realized both men were standing in front of her, but only one of them was standing with complete honesty. Over the following weeks, Emily moved into a small apartment near the Seattle waterfront. She didn't run into Noah's arms. She didn't rush into another relationship. Instead, she spent time alone, rebuilding the part of herself she had lost. Daniel apologized sincerely. I loved you, he said during their final conversation. I know, Emily replied, but love without honesty eventually becomes loneliness. They ended their marriage peacefully, with respect instead of bitterness. Months later, Noah asked Emily to meet him at the same lighthouse where they had once dreamed about their future. The ocean stretched endlessly behind them. The wind carried the sound of crashing waves. Noah smiled nervously. I bought a ring 7 years ago. He reached into his pocket and revealed a simple diamond ring that had traveled across continents with him. I never got the chance to ask. He knelt. This time, nothing is standing between us. Emily smiled through tears. You already know my answer. She nodded. Yes. As the sun disappeared beyond the Pacific Ocean, Emily finally understood something life had taught her the hardest way. Sometimes people enter your life to teach you comfort. Others teach you courage. But the person who truly loves you will never build a future on lies, even if telling the truth means risking everything. Real love isn't about perfect timing. It's about finding your way back to each other with honesty, trust, and the courage to choose the truth. And this time, neither of them let go.